What we're going to do now is once again look at some probability. We're going to use the same example we did last time. So we're going to look at the word DOG and we're going to look at how many ways that we can select two letters from this word and what the sample space would become. But this time we're not going to replace the letters. So once again we can draw up our table array. We're going to choose two letters. So we're going to say our letter number 1 is going to be one of the options DOG, and then our second letter is also going to be one of the options DOG. So let's go down vertically this time, DOG. Now, when we do our first letter, if we choose the letter D, we cannot choose the second letter being the letter D as well, because it's out of the bag. Imagine that the letters have been picked up and taken out of a bag. So that means that this possibility won't exist. And so what we do is we put a cross in that to show that it's not possible to get a D and then another D because we're not replacing the letters. However, our O, if we choose the O, it is possible to get a D as our second letter. And if we choose the G as our first letter, it is possible to get the D as our second letter. If we come down to our next row, if we choose D as our first letter, it is possible to choose the O as our second letter. If we choose the O as our first letter, though, it's not possible to get the O as our second letter. And so we put a cross in that position. If we choose the G as our first letter, it is possible to get the O as our second letter. And so you can see here we're reducing the number of possibilities because we're not replacing the letters into our bag. Our third row, so letter number 1 is going to be D, and letter number 2 is going to be G. That's possible. Letter number 1 is going to be O, and letter number 2 is going to be G. That's possible. However, it's not possible to get two Gs, and so we can cross those out. So when we look at our sample space, you'll see that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possibilities that we can get by taking two letters out without replacing. And so when we now work out our probability of getting these, our total sample space has 6 elements. If we look at the probability of getting an OD, so let's say the probability, I'll do that in front of me over here, so the probability of getting an O and then a G, there's one occurrence where we get an O and a G, right here, out of our total of 6 possibilities. And so that means that our probability is going to be 1 chance in 6 of getting the O and the G without replacement.